Hello everyone, and welcome to another Tinto Talks. That time when I have a look at what the devs have responded, replied to, and reacted to your comments in the various dev diaries that we've had over the week. Of course, we have some very interesting dev diaries to go over, but I also have the dev diary that we had like a week ago that I forgot to make a video on because I was a little bit in Spain. So we're going to go into that after we, of course, go to the Saturday building. But of course, I would like to ask you all to sub to the channel. Maybe write a comment if you see anything interesting here. It's going to be a pretty long one. So hopefully there will be something in here that will be of interest to you. So without further ado, let's go to the Saturday building. Right, anyway. Let's go through the full chain of a building. So we're going to get the earliest version of the building all the way up to Age of Absolutism style, and that's kind of cool to me. I think that's something I said in the previous Saturday building, was that I really like seeing like progression in things, and progression in buildings is no different. So, full chain of a building where we have seen at least one before. So, why do you want to upgrade your buildings? Well, there is a more efficient use of resources and pops is the main reason, and more output per building is another. Also worth remembering is that you can have 4 scriptoriums and start building 1 printer shops in a town, and you'll end up with 3 scriptoriums and 1 printer shop in that town. Right. Okay. So I needed to understand what was saying here. If I have 4 scriptoriums and then I start building a printer shop, which is the upgrade to the scriptorium, then it will remove one of the scriptoriums and turn it into a printer shop. That makes sense. I guess that's a little bit like EU4. You're not building an extra counting house. If you already have a workshop, you're replacing that workshop with the counting house. But now we can have 4 of them. So we have the book creator is available from the Age of Traditions and requires clergy to produce a small amount of books in the scriptorium. A specialized center where scribes meticulously copy manuscripts. A scriptorium produces a variety of texts of religious, legal, and even literary nature in an effort to preserve and disseminate knowledge. So we're using 50 pops here, 50 clergy pops, some various materials to make some books. Okay, and then when we move on to the next version, we can research how to build this after we have the printing press institution, the Age of Discovery. It'll use burgers, but provides many more books. So 250 burgers this time, different materials, but we get 1 book. Let's say this is per month. I don't know if that's true, but we're just gonna say this is per month. 1 book per month versus 0.3, but you're using 5 times the pops, you're only getting 3 times the amount of books. So it's slightly less efficient pop-wise, but all these again, 0.6 versus 1.9 or something like that for the amount of materials. So I feel like it is just less efficient, no? I mean, it depends on, like, dyes probably a little bit more valuable versus what we have here. So what's that, like, isn't that lead? I don't recall. Paper, tools, and wood. I think that's lead. I'm going to look it up. I was correct. It is in fact lead. So lead, paper, tools, and wood to make books. Okay. Utilizing easily produced and replaceable parts, the printer shop will reduce both our costs in labor and materials to produce and spread written documents among our population. So, in the Age of Absolutism, we get the printing manufactory. Creates a few more burgers, but definitely producing more books. Double the output there. So this finally seems like we're getting a little bit more efficient. The introduction of the new printing techniques allows printers to produce far more books than before. And in the Age of Revolutions, we have the printing mill. We can use the building, which doubles the output with some resources increased. Most importantly, employs laborers instead of burghers, making the state stronger. So, those look like the same pops, so maybe laborers. This UI just hasn't been updated to show that it's laborers instead of burghers yet. But either way, and again, using the same materials to make the books. New techniques involving the usage of chemicals and more durable print plates allows for the mass production of books. Fair enough. Lovely stuff there. So, with the Saturday building out the way, I'm going to bring you back to the dev diary we had on the various updates that we had to the game. If we have a look, the updates that it said it was, at least, was diplomacy and warfare mechanics. So, let's have a look at the diplomacy and warfare mechanic responses. There's not a whole lot in here. I've got a few ones that are interesting to showcase, though. I think changing from AE to antagonism when it comes to forming coalitions makes sense. It opens possibilities for coalitions forming rather than just expansion. For example, coalitions forming against the revolution birthplace, as it did happen historically with France. That's an entirely fair point. I remember when I made this dev diary initially, I did mention that I felt like antagonism was just AE with extra steps. I still feel that way. I just feel like people kind of thought that by me saying extra steps, I wasn't taking into effect the fact that you can have aggressive expansion or antagonism from things that weren't conquest. Which I mean, I did recognize that. I still think it is AE with extra steps. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I think those extra steps being things like, having a base amount of antagonism for being a different religion or being a different culture, being the revolution target. I think that's a good thing, and I don't think it takes away from it if I say those are the extra steps of AE now. But yeah, no, it seems fine to me. Here, I feel like -5 for language is very harsh, especially since religion is only -4, which I feel should have a bigger impact relative to language. And Johan's like, oh, sure, tweakable. And then Daniel here coming in with, in my opinion, religion should affect antagonism about twice as much as culture and language, especially before the rise of nationalism. Even antagonism towards a different religion in the same group could be noticeably high because, well, just look at the friendly history between Catholics and Orthodox, or Catholics and Protestants, or Sunni and Shia. And no, that's changed now. So, religion is now much more antagonistic than a language in the early game. Whether that changes as ages go, I'm not sure yet, but I think that would be a pretty cool thing if that was to occur. Can there be several coalitions against you? No, unfortunately, that is not the case. You cannot have multiple coalitions, which I feel like is a shame. And it seems like a lot of people are disagreeing here as well. So maybe in a future Tinto responses, that might also be something that changes. Who knows? Would it be viable for terrain to matter in terms of supply distance, or would it be too complicated for the player? It should be harder to supply an army over the mountains than over flat plains. And yeah, no, supply, because this dev diary also had a bunch of stuff about supply in it, is based on the movement cost. And I think that is really cool. But we move on to the next dev diary, the one from this Wednesday just gone. And another really interesting dev diary. Let's have a look at what we have. So, regarding the Conquistador feature and Colonial changes, have there been any thoughts to expanding it to more uses? This is something I said when we learned about Conquistadors. I think it's fantastic. It looks really cool as a mechanic. I'm a little bit sad that it is just for the Iberian Peninsula nations. Thrujmir here saying, or Thrujelmir saying that he thinks it makes perfect sense to use it for to establish European companies in India and Indonesia, and that is a great point. So Johan here saying that others may eventually get similar mechanics, but for now it's a good Iberia-only mechanic. I hope that the eventually is soon. I hope the eventually is before release, because, yeah, especially for the VOC, the East India Trading Company as well. I mean, that makes sense to have them here, and it would be really cool, because it's a cool looking mechanic. One thing we want to do was to make each age feel more unique and different to play, while also adding, there is something missing. He fixed it, and if we go up, actually, it could go up just by Control F, adding, we see that he said, while also adding interesting choices. So, yeah, he just missed a couple of words. It's all good. We fixed it. We found out what it was. What is expected army size, though? Well, it is the army your country is kind of expected to have. There are drawbacks to not being close to it, and as I said in the dev diary itself, I think something like a prestige loss if you're not near it, or a prestige gain if you're over it, might be the way to go on that front. Unified culture group. Pops in your country have the same culture group and language will also change this culture. This can only be done once. Could we expand on the reasoning of the action? What is it intended to simulate, and why can it only be done once? Is it once per game? So unified culture group represents the historical French or Russian state-led cultural centralizations. It can only be done once to prevent countries from using the action every time they acquire a new location. So makes sense. That's fair enough. French is the example that I gave when I was trying to explain it. So yeah, makes sense to me. What is the reason for this? Logically, as the as the location loses population, this is basically talking about why does the state that is sending the colonizers to the New World, why is that state gaining development? It'd be more logical for it to lose prosperity and development rather than boost it, wouldn't it? You on here saying it's game balance. Also, if you have a port or location gathering people to go somewhere, that would provide more work and prosperity. And you know what? That's true. That's true. All of those colonists are going to be in the bars, or I should say the taverns, drinking, staying at the inns, bringing their wealth to that place before they set off for a new life. So I am convinced. I was asking for justifications and logic for it in my video. I feel like I got a bunch of comments that pretty nicely explained it, and this is another one here. Does the age matter for the antagonism mechanic? I feel like nations in different ages are antagonized by different values. In Renaissance, they're antagonized by religion, but absolutism, culture is a much stronger factor. It's easily adaptable to work that way, yes. So I feel like maybe if that's not how it works right now, Johan seems like he is already swayed by this argument, and maybe that is going to be the case by time of release. So hopefully, because this does sound like a pretty good idea to me. Will ages give the same modifiers to the entire world? Yes, they will. I know some people are a little bit upset that the ages are even the same across the world. Like the age of Renaissance. Why is China getting the age of Renaissance? That was a distinctly European thing, but at the end of the day, it's still a game, and some base level mechanics need to be in the game for it to function. This looks awesome. Are the breakaway cultures predefined or are they dynamic? So these are the cultures where you are creating a new one if you are not the, hegemonic, kingdom of your culture. They are, in fact, dynamic. So, what they're based on, maybe if it's you're based on your country name or your culture name, then, creating a new culture out of that and bringing it outside of the culture group of the majority. If that is dynamic, you're going to probably end up with some kind of funky names at certain times. So Goran asking here, is there a game setting so it makes it so only historical new cultures can be formed? He fears the AI making a lot of new cultures with really stupid names. Sintave here saying, no, but it's a good idea. They could do something like they did with formables, which is fair enough. It does feel a little bit sad that would be the case, as in, I would rather not have only historical cultures can be formed. And I also don't want to see stupidly named cultures being formed. Like a culture being named after a location kind of way is what we're kind of expecting here. I think there needs to be some middle ground where you have the like the plausible situation, right? This is a culture that could plausibly come into existence as its own separate thing. Somewhere in between, like this feels too strict and this feels, silly. So somewhere in between would be nice, I think. Finally, does this mean that German can't unify as long as, say, the Livonian Order still exists and technically has German as a primary culture, even if they have no German majority provinces? Yes, the idea is that powerful endgame actions that will have you work towards over centuries, not something you can do willy-nilly, which is perfectly reasonable. That's how that mechanic should work, in my opinion. So fantastic. But that is all we have for these Dev Diaries. Of course, on Friday, we had the Ilkhanate and Persia and Rise of Timurids Dev Diary, which was incredibly enlightening and certainly something that I'm looking forward to playing. And we have a lot of responses. I think like over 50 responses from Pavia in this thread. So let us get into it and see what we have to understand about this. Is the decision to have Georgia in the Ilkhanate final. As we've proven in the past, Georgia had left the empire by 1337, no longer sent armies to help the emperor since 1325, and paid taxes since 1330. Pavia are saying, nope, they haven't yet finished the review from the Tinto Maps feedback for Persia, so this may in fact, Georgia may be leaving, I mean, you can't see it in this image, but Georgia may be leaving the Ilkhanate IO, which is fair enough. What does auto-conquer religious enemies do? I wish this was answered. It was quoted, but it wasn't answered. I am of the opinion that auto-conquer is probably when you siege something, you conquer it. A bit like if you played Imperator Rome, the way that Civil Wars and the Wars of the Diadochi worked, where when you siege something, it auto-conquered it. I think that is what it is. And we do know that that mechanic is in the game. I remember back and forth with myself and Johan on the forums, where I expressed worry about that mechanic and was set right. When you conquer or when you occupy the provincial capital, then the entire state will go towards you. I feel like that's what this is, but I don't know for sure. Alex here saying, the amount of content is crazy. Seems like I might actually be able to compete with EU4 and its 10 years of development. And Pavi responding here, well, this is a teaser since today's Tinto flavor was already the longest to date, and I'll explain a bit more of the Horde's content in the Golden Horde flavor review. I think that he's asking what this is, government-type bonuses. And yes, they have tons of content. There's a reason why he's regularly saying that they're just showing some of the available content in each Tinto flavor and not all, which is awesome news. Awesome, like, knowing that, what we're seeing, even though it is the longest Tinto flavor, is just a small part of what we get to experience when we get the game, is awesome. So moving on. It should be noted that non-Borgigids cannot be Khans. Even Timur could not claim that title. The Jalairids and Chobanids should only be able to claim or unify the Ilkhanate through a Borgigid puppet or character, or suffer a crippling blow to legitimacy. And that is what the last condition of the claim to Ilkhanan actually means. That you need a Borgigin, which is, yeah, I mean, we pointed that out. You can invite a Borgigin to your country to use for this reason, but yeah, no, it's already a thing. Does the Diwan have anything like EU4's bonuses for collecting cultures like Pokemon in it? He loved that. I think this is a thing like the Moogle culture doodad. I think that's what the Diwan was. It's been a long time since I played Moogles, so maybe that is something else that I'm misremembering. But no, they do not have any Pokemon mechanics for cultures, but they think that the ones they've shown for accepted cultures, cultural influence, tradition, unified culture group, and formed new culture are far more interesting. I mean, fair enough. I did find the Moogle thing quite interesting. I do quite like that mechanic. Mostly because I dislike the EU4 culture mechanics. So liking something that changes that situation up a bit is pretty obviously reasonable. But I think it's also fair to not have like, oh, I've unified this culture in EU5, therefore I'm going to get this bonus. I mean, that's a little silly, so maybe it's good that that's not in. But moving on. I can't help but feel like this map could use some work. I think it'd be better if the three claimants had different colors in the map mode. Right now, they don't feel like they are challenging each other. If anything, look like they're allies. And that's a fair point. That is actually a fair point. Pavi here's thanks for the suggestion. It could get more love. The coloring of the map is a bit old at this point. So let's see what they come up with in reference to this suggestion. Why is Timur a Borgigin? Shouldn't he have his own family, the Gurkhani? According to his claims, he was descendant of a common ancestor of the Borgigin dynasty. They could create an event so that when Timur does become a ruler, the Gurkhani dynasty could be created for him, which is, I mean, okay. I've seen quite a few comments about the dynasty of Timur. I had comments in my own comment section, the previous video about it, and there are quite a few comments about it on this dev diary as well. By the way, how do the Chominids show up for the struggle for the Ilkhanate? Historically, they basically became the strongest contender only 1.5 years into the game's period. I know Hassan Kutchak is basically forming his ragtag army at the moment as he moves east from Karsar in Anatolia, but it'd be cool to know how they will be represented in-game and their jumpstart to power. So there are a couple of events that make the Chominids appear as a country early in the game, so if that is the country you're wanting to play, then, well, that's going to be a thing you could do. Maybe they start as an ABC, an army-based country, that we just don't get to see at the start of the game. That could be cool. Does the Timur tag have any flavor regarding a Mughal formable in India? Yes, the Mughal Empire can be created, and it already has flavor. Can the Ilkhanate claimants integrate into Persian culture and form Persia too? Yes, you can be or change your culture to Persian as a claimant with the regular game mechanics. However, you have to decide either for the Ilkhanan or for Persia as a possible Empire rank formable. So you can't do both, which makes sense. Can you lead the Ilkhanate IO without forming the country and expanding by inviting other countries in? Yes, you can. The Ilkhanan can be expanded to any country with a capital in the regions of Persia, the Crescent, Caucasus, and Anatolia. So the Ilkhanan can get really quite large, which I guess is historical. I'm pretty sure that... no, it was the Timurids that fucked on the Ottomans, not the Ilkhanan. My apologies. But yeah, no, that is a pretty big behemoth of a country if you get every region in that core system that they have available to them. Will there be any special mechanics for the Timurid invasions of Georgia? It can be invaded either through the situation mechanics or the regular game mechanics. So, yes. Is the prodigy trait exclusive to starting characters, or can new children be generated with the trait later in the game? It's a generic trait that any child can have, and they've scripted that Timur also already starts with it. Conquistadors, what are the Spanish doing in Central Asia? Essentially, they had, for some reason, shown the Conquistadors in the dev diary. I pointed this out in my video. It's kind of weird since it was there. Since it appears in the army-based country's flavor group, he took it without a second thought, changing it for one of the other Horde-related assets in the main post, and we get to see what that is here. He replaced it with Step Slave Raiding. Allows you to raid the religious enemies for slaves. Our raiding parties move as fast as the wind, hitting and running almost before anyone is aware of our presence. Looting the settlements we attack is not the only way to make big money, but we can also capture prisoners that we sell for good money. So, awesome. That is really cool. How does it work? When you're at war, you obtain slaves from captured locations. Well, it is the raid religious enemies for slaves modifier. It allows armies to enslave parts of all pops of a different religion group when occupying a location, which is kind of scary. Border raids are confirmed. He guesses so. Basically, the Step Horde government type allows you to raid a border. It allows the country to use the raid border action. Some of these tooltips are a little bit redundant. Can raid borders equals yes. What does the can raid borders do? Can raid borders allows a country to use the raid borders action. Oh boy, what does that do? Raid the borders of our unsuspecting neighbors for slaves and gold. Some of these nested tooltips are a little redundant, let's be honest. But yeah, allowing you to raid your... do you have to be enemies? Can you do it while at technically peace, like you can in Crusader Kings? That would be interesting. And also raising as well here allows your country to raise the location, letting them ransack the location for gold. Very cool. Is there any content about the Safavids emerging, so we can switch to playing as them? Yes, there is content about the Safavids, but they need to first explain the Muslim mechanics in the Tinto Talks before we get to know about them. Fair enough. What does the Timurid Empire Gov reform do? Can we show it? So you get speed of integration, possible Gov reforms, an extra cabinet seat, antagonism impact of -50%, which is crazy, and they can raise and they can raid borders as well. The great ambitions of our founder have carved an empire of unforeseeable span in Central Asia. The bureaucracy focuses heavily on the expansion of our borders. Very cool. Looks like a good government reform. I love how the system can function as a framework for the dynamic collapse and rebirth of empires through gameplay. And long comment. But essentially, Pavi here is saying that they're simulating it dynamically. On the one hand, you can elevate your country to an empire rank using the country rank feature. On the other hand, they have a disaster called the Decline of Empire used to simulate the instability and decline of historical empires under certain conditions. The illustration of the last Tinto Talks was the illustration of this disaster. That being, if we can quickly head back to it, not this one here. This is the Decline of Empire's image. So it's kind of cool. Illustration, I should say, not image. But yeah, lovely stuff. We also have the select core region here. We'll go back to that. I think I put that in the wrong place. My apologies. Does this mean that the Timurids will lose most of their cores after Timur's death? Be a good way to simulate the issues they had after his death in real life, since that was Shah Rukh's whole thing, trying to consolidate and properly integrate the empire. He thinks so. He'll have to double check in anyway. Double check to confirm. In any case, it'll be more difficult to rule over his empire after the end of the situation, because you have this core region modifier and it will stay after Timur's death. So, sorry, no, the cores stay, but this core region modifier is what changes. So we gain, essentially, after Timur's death, 20% unrest. But these cores here, or the cores that you get from this thing, this is what will leave, because that's what you get here. Nonetheless, it'll be difficult to rule the Timurid Horde or Empire after his death. Makes sense, but you know, maybe Shah Rukh will also have a modifier for himself. It's a question. But for example, can I, as Georgia, become the Ilkhan? Is there a religious blocker, or can I become a blood descendant of Genghis by way of marriage trickery? What does the Ilkhanate look like if you go by the puppet route? Can I have a Christian Ilkhanate? So you can invite a character of the Borgigan dynasty to your country, thus making it possible to become a claimant. If the Ilkhanate is formed as a country, it'll behave like any other, including religious mechanics, etc. So yes, you can in fact do that. Invite a Borgigan to your country, making it possible to become a claimant, and then you can form the Ilkhanate, and you can become a Christian Ilkhanate if you so desire, which I think is cool. Does Timur have an event where he becomes, gets the lame nickname? It'd be a good opportunity to sneak in a Skyrim reference. Who's to say that the Skyrim wasn't a Timur reference? But yes, as he did when he was younger, he tends to group with some like-minded individuals and commit some pillaging on their own. However, in one of the recent escapades to steal some sheep from a local shepherd, he was caught in the act and shot by 2 arrows, injuring him in his right leg and making him lose 2 fingers of his right hand. Although fortunately not fatal, these injuries will accompany him forever, making him a cripple for life. So he becomes the Lame, or changes his nickname to Lang. Timur the Lang. Cool. Nice to have that kind of flavor in there. Will there be any special buildings for caravanserais? Yes, there will be. So it unlocks the caravanserai. Trade routes arose in Central Asia during the last millennium, creating the network known as the Silk Road. Key to this was the flourishing of caravanserai, the places where merchants and their caravans could stop and rest along the way. So, requires some jewelry and some cloth. We get some trade advantage, some trade capacity. Requires burghers to be in the building. Yeah, important milestones along the Silk Road, providing rest for both merchants and the animals carrying their valuable goods. Nice. Love to see more buildings. I don't know if I missed it, but do babies spawn with 000 skills and improve through their life for their final stats? Yes, and some traits make it easier or more difficult for them to grow their skills. Cool, good to know. And this isn't something that the devs responded to, but this is also a very good post here. Not flavor related, but the government take bonus window in its current form is really difficult to read. It's something I did point out in my video as well. So just make it into a list. Yes, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. This is far, far better. Far, 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 far better. So, yes, I'm going to give you a love heart. Thank you. Give us the game already! No. Does this mean that former empire would transform into an IO after disaster occurs? No, some countries may secede from it, some other nasty effects may happen, but it won't become an IO. Okay. If I never elevate to empire, this never happens. The decline of empires thing, disaster. There are other mechanics that may impact you if growing your country while staying in another country's rank. That disaster is specifically tackling empires. There are bonuses that you might miss from not upgrading to empire. To avoid a possible future disaster, though, it's a player's choice in any case. So yeah, there is. I think there's still some pushback against what some refer to as gamey mechanics. So clicking a button to say, "Oh, my country is no longer a kingdom; it's now an empire," unlocks new mechanics. Also unlocks the potential of new disasters. And I guess some people like Ispil here are unhappy with that kind of gaming mechanic. Personally, I'm fine with it because at the end of the day, it is still a game, and mechanics, you know, locking mechanics behind being a certain rank of country, I think is fine. But I know this is something that is somewhat controversial. I don't know if it's a loud minority or what, but it is something I've heard before. Probably some modifiers to make it so that Timur is immortal before he starts his conquest, otherwise it's going to be awkward to see him die to a seasonal flu. It is something they've discussed, to be honest. They ended up against making him immortal, because even if it's a very important situation for the game, they don't want to railroad it in 100% of the games, so it's very likely to happen, but not 100% guaranteed. I think that's fair enough. I don't think it's necessary to have him go a conquering into every single game. Yeah, no, that's fine to me. It's fine to me. What other characters start off with a prodigy trait? So there are 3 characters that start with it. One's an important character narrative-wise. Another is the heir of an important country in Caesar, and the other is a random French countess. So I want your help in the comments. Who is... I mean, I feel like none of these are... It's 3 other characters, so none of these are Timur. So there are 4 characters total. One of them is Timur. I would like for people to guess what the other 3 characters are. I don't think random French countess, unless it is facetious, calling it random, right? And it's not random at all. Then I would like for people to guess what characters are being referred to here. That would be kind of fun. Can you make this decision for all countries? After all, hordes weren't the only ones who went pillaging Rome. That is for the, raiding mechanic that we were talking about earlier. It's for large-scale raising and something they only want for hordes, which I think is fair enough, making hordes a bit more unique. Making all countries unique, for sure. Is there a narrative content for the Timurid decline after his death? There should definitely be some Timurid IO where the various governors become autonomous and their own tag, like the EU4 start date. Some. In total, they have 34 events associated with the Rise of Timur situation and 29 for Timur and the Timurids. I would like to point out that if we take the example of England in EU4, England has around 50 to 60 events. That's it. England has one of the highest flavor contents in EU4 and has 50 to 60 unique events. We're talking here about, what's that, 63 events just for Rise of Timur and the Timurids. I feel like that's a pretty good metric by which to judge the flavor of this game. I still see comments, especially on Reddit, saying that, the game was never going to be able to live up to the flavor of EU4 because 10 years development, blah, blah, blah. But if we're just going by how many events, flavor events, each unique events the countries have, which is, a lot where a lot of the flavor is. I mean, EU5 has it beat. It just does. That's kind of crazy. Kind of nice. Not gonna lie. Kind of liking it. And then finally we have here 50 replies from Pavia. It seems that the region has the royal flavor. It is a meaty Tinto flavor. Lots of replies are required. But that is where we're leaving it for today with the Tinto responses. So, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I would like to know your thoughts in the comment section below, as I always do. What of these comments are super, interesting? What things surprised you? Anything that you disliked? Let me know in the comment section below. I will be seeing you on Monday for the Tinto Maps rework of a place. I think it was actually the Tinto Maps rework of Persia and the Caucasus. So that'd be fun to see. Kind of sticking with the theme. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and bye-bye.